Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. Israeli fighter jets have launched air raids on the Gaza Strip, violating the fragile ceasefire with Hamas for a third time. The Israel Defense Forces alleged that the attack was in response to incendiary balloons launched from the enclave. Indian troops have martyred another civilian in the Pulwama district of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youth was targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Rajpura area. Russia says NATO is purposely destabilizing the Black Sea with its Sea Breeze 21 joint military exercises. A Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the drills cannot be called friendly or regular but are clearly politically driven. In a briefing, Maria Zakharova said the US and allies are turning the area to a conflict zone. India's death toll from COVID-19 has crossed 400,000 after the country logged 853 daily deaths. In Pakistan, 24 people lost their lives and more than 1,200 people tested positive in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed over 3.9 million lives and infected more than 182 million people so far. Well, those were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. Israeli fighter jets have launched air raids on the Gaza Strip, violating the fragile ceasefire with Hamas for the third time. The Israel Defense Forces alleged that the attack was in response to incendiary balloons launched from the enclave. In a tweet, the Israeli military claimed it struck a weapon manufacturing site belonging to Hamas. The resistance movement has not commented on the incident so far. Meanwhile, Hamas has denounced recent remarks by German President Walter Steinmeier. Steinmeier told Israeli media that ICC has no jurisdiction to investigate Israeli war crimes in Palestinian territories. A Hamas spokesperson said the comments show Berlin's bias towards Israel's aggressive policies. In another development, Israeli soldiers injured 61 Palestinians in a clampdown on a protest in West Bank's Nablus city. While in Jerusalem city, the regime forces arrested 3 Palestinians. Indian troops have martyred another civilian in the Pulwama district of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youth was targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Rajpura area. The extrajudicial military operation of the occupying forces is still underway. The forces have claimed 384 Kashmiri lives since the revocation of the occupied valley status in August 2019. Russia says NATO is purposely destabilizing the Black Sea with its Sea Breeze 21 joint military exercises. A Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the drills cannot be called friendly or regular, but are politically driven. In a briefing, Maria Zakharova said the US and allies are turning the area to a conflict zone. She said the drills are an attempt to make another region unstable under Washington's guidance. The spokesperson termed the multinational naval exercise openly anti-Russian and provocative muscle flexing. Led by Ukraine, the yearly exercises are being held in the Black Sea and involve the US, NATO and 30 other states. The US has repeated its commitment to transition to a new relationship with the Afghan forces post-withdrawal. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin spoke to his Afghan counterpart, Bismillah Mohammadi, on a phone call. In a statement, the Pentagon said Austin stressed that Washington is deeply invested in the security and stability of Kabul. It said both leaders acknowledged the shared sacrifices, including the Taliban's most recent attacks on Afghan forces. Kabul said Austin raised concerns over the increase in violence by the Taliban, calling it a barrier to reach a deal. The Defense Ministry said Mohammadi appreciated continuous U.S. support to Afghan forces and people. Pakistan says it will welcome the true representative government of the people in Afghanistan at every level. This was reaffirmed as the military's high command briefed lawmakers on the peace process and other strategic matters. The Parliamentary Committee on National Security was informed that Pakistan will continue to play its positive role for peace in Afghanistan. The leaders said lasting peace in Afghanistan will bring stability in South Asia. They added that Pakistan's soil is not being used against Afghanistan and expressed hope that Kabul will do the same. Lawmakers were informed that 90% of the fencing at the Afghan border had been completed. The Arab coalition in Yemen says it has destroyed an explosive-laden drone launched by Houthis towards southern Saudi Arabia. In a statement, a coalition spokesperson said Yemeni rebels attempted to target Khamis Mushat city. The U.S. State Department says Washington is beyond fed up and horrified by the repeated Houthi attacks inside Yemen. In a press briefing, the department spokesperson Ned Price said the assaults are exacerbating Yemen's humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, the Yemeni government and the UAE Southern Transitional Council have agreed to stop all forms of escalation against each other. Saudi state media said both sides held a meeting in the Saudi capital to discuss the implementation of the Riyadh initiative. India's death toll from COVID-19 has crossed 400,000 after the country logged 853 daily deaths. Globally, the virus has claimed over 3.9 million lives and infected more than 182 million people so far. Amid the spread of Delta variant, the emergence of new COVID-induced diseases and vaccine controversies are threatening gains made in the fight against the pandemic. Scientists are warning that after black fungus in India, more dangerous and even deadly fungal infections have spawned in critically ill coronavirus patients globally. In Bangladesh, the streets of the capital Dhaka are eerily empty, except for soldiers implementing a national lockdown. The Delta variant is also said to badly impact summer tourism, which is vital to southern Europe's economies. Meanwhile, a nighttime curfew is imposed in several Portuguese municipalities as authorities scramble to contain a surge.
The government decided that in municipalities with high or very high risk, with an incidence rate of 120 or 240, there will be a restriction of circulation on public roads from 11 p.m. We are not in a position to consider the pandemic under control, and I urge everyone to continue to comply with the rules and to avoid risky behavior.
Thailand has reported record deaths for the third day in a row. Indonesia is tripling its oxygen supplies to hospitals as the Delta variant worsens the outbreak. The variant has also driven South Korea's daily count of cases to the highest level in nearly 6 months. Meanwhile, Australia has announced to halve the number of international arrivals as Canberra battles to contain outbreaks of the Delta variant.
To temporarily reduce commercial inbound passenger arrivals to all major ports by 50% from current caps to reduce the pressure on quarantine facilities due to the increased risks of the Delta strain of the virus.
The White House has sent out special teams to hotspots across the country to combat the Indian strain. Over on the south, sanctions hit Venezuela has begun administering Cuba's Abdala vaccine in the country. Meanwhile, the African Union has slammed the EU for hoarding vaccine supplies, saying not a single jab was sent to Africa. Pakistan has reported 24 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the toll has risen to 22,345. It says nearly 1,300 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry says out of over 959,000 cases, more than 905,000 people have recovered. It notes there are nearly 32,000 active cases in the country, of which over 1,800 are critical. Pakistan has administered more than 16 million doses of coronavirus vaccines to date. The government says 2.5 million doses of the U.S. donated Moderna vaccine will arrive on Friday. The U.S. has designated 17 countries as not doing enough to combat human trafficking and warned them of potential sanctions. State Department's annual trafficking in persons report said discriminatory policies perpetuated human trafficking. The report drew a link between trafficking with systemic racism in the U.S. and abroad for the first time. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said inequities undercut Washington's battle against human trafficking. The report cited the coronavirus pandemic as a cause for a surge in human slavery between 2020 and 2021. It also called out several U.S. allies, including Israel, Norway, and Portugal, for backsliding in their efforts. Israel was cited for lapsing on sustained initiatives to combat trafficking, including a decrease in investigations of perpetrators. While the report said Turkey provided support to an armed militia in Syria that recruits child soldiers. The Ethiopian government has urged the Tigray rebels to join a unilateral ceasefire in the conflict. Hostilities persist in the restive region and pressure built internationally for all sides to pull back. The Tigray People's Liberation Front has dismissed the ceasefire announcement as a joke, a TPLF spokesman said. They're closing in on both the western and southern parts of their territory. He said operations are underway and the number of prisoners of war is increasing by the minute. Meanwhile, the International Rescue Committee said a bridge over the TIGRAY River near Shirtown has been destroyed. It said delivering aid to the region will be even more severely hampered than before. In the U.S., 5 people have been injured after a small building collapsed during construction in Washington, D.C. The fire and emergency medical services say the building came down during a severe thunderstorm. 4 construction workers were immediately pulled from the wreckage, while 1 remained trapped for almost 2 hours before being rescued. The rescue service says no workers has life-threatening injuries. U.S. President Joe Biden and the First Lady have visited the site of the deadly building collapse near Miami in Florida. Biden promised more federal aid in a meeting with Miami-Dade Mayor Danila Levine Cava and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He also offered condolences to families of those killed and missing. Biden said the administration will look into covering the costs of the first 30 days of the rescue operation. The confirmed toll has risen to 18 with the discovery of 6 more bodies. Another 145 people are missing and fear trapped in the rubble for the last 7 days. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Canada, a wildfire that began after record-breaking temperatures has destroyed most of Lytton town in British Columbia. Parliamentarian Brad West said the town has sustained structural damage and 90% of the village was reduced to ashes. He added the fire also caused extensive damage to hydro stations and highways, limiting access to Lytton by road. The government officials have given out fresh evacuation orders as more wildfires tear through the province. Earlier, British Columbia Premier John Horgan said more than 1,000 people in Lytton were evacuated. Nearly 500 people have died due to record-breaking heat over the last 5 days in British Columbia. The UN has recognized a new record high temperature for the Antarctic continent. It confirmed a reading of 18.3 degrees Celsius made last year in February. The previous verified record for the continent was 17.5 degrees Celsius, registered in March 2015. Antarctica's average annual temperature ranges from -10 on the coast to -60 degrees at the high spots of the interior. According to reports, the Earth's average surface temperature has gone up to 1 degree Celsius since the 19th century, but the air over Antarctica has warmed more than twice that much. Research says warming of 2 degrees Celsius could push the melting of ice sheets with enough frozen water to lift oceans 13 meters. In northern Italy, extraordinary measures are undertaken every year to save the Persena glacier from melting. More about this unique method in this report.
Experts say approximately 70% of the snow can be saved from melting over the summer season with a protective covering. A protective covering has been placed over an area of some 120,000 square meters on the Prisena Glacier in an operation that took nearly a month. A glaciologist from the Trento Science Museum, Christian Casarotto, said the covering basically works in the same way as a reflective window guard.
They are 5 meter wide and 70 meter long strips that are laid across the glacier at the end of the winter season. This slows down the melting of the snow on the surface. Imagine that silver cloth that we put on the dashboard of our car in the summer. Without the sheet, our black dashboard gets hotter, unlike with the sheet on top, and it warms up less.
Experts follow what is called mass balance to study the effects of climate change. Casarato explained it has experienced a downward trend in the last 15 to 20 years, leading to the reduction in the mass of glaciers.
The difference between the winter snow accumulation and the summer snow melt gives us the net balance. That is how much the glacier has gained if the snow accumulations have been higher, or how much the glacier has lost if the losses have been higher. That's what we've been experiencing now for the last 15 to 20 years. A continuous downward trend and therefore a reduction in mass of our glaciers.
Casarato explained how studying glaciers can teach us about the direction we are headed towards. According to him, the study arms us with the knowledge we need to correct our course and make sustainable policies for the betterment of future generations.
Asia-Pacific stocks are trading mixed as investors look ahead to a closely watched U.S. jobs report set to be released later. Shares in mainland China and Hong Kong have tumbled nearly 2%. Seoul's Kospi is trading flat. Australia's ASX 200 has gained close to 0.5%, while Japan's Nikkei 225 has edged up slightly. Officials from 130 countries have agreed to overhaul the global tax system to ensure big companies pay a fair share wherever they operate. In a statement, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said there would be a minimum corporate tax of 15%. Technical details are to be agreed upon by October so that the new rules can be implemented by 2023. The U.S. President said thanks to a global minimum tax, multinational corporations will not be able to push tax rates down. In a statement, Joe Biden said they will no longer be able to avoid paying their share by hiding profits generated in the U.S. The 9 countries that did not sign include low-tax EU members Ireland, Estonia, and Hungary. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.